Well, good afternoon, folks. Welcome to 3 Zen. This afternoon, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my last flight in the T-38 on 26 May 2006. Now, I retired from the Air Force on the 15th of July, 1988, but I didn't have my last flight in the 38 until May 2006. And there's an interesting story about how all that came about. That afternoon, hot afternoon in San Antonio on July 15th, 1988, when I taxied in to parking on that last flight, or so I thought, I shut the engines down and I took a moment, a very, very quick moment, to look up to the heavens and to thank God for having had the opportunity to fly that jet for as many years as I did. I accumulated just over 3,300 hours in it. At any rate, when I put my head back, I just raised my head, looked to the heavens, and in the video I have of that flight, you can almost barely perceive it, but you can see it. And like I said, I thank God for having been given that opportunity. But there was something in me that told me that was not going to be my last flight in the 38. So I wasn't too terribly torn up about it or upset about it or anything like that. I just had a feeling that that was not my last flight. And as it turned out, it was not. In 1994, in July 1994, about 6 years later, I stumbled into sobriety. And that's a story in and of itself for another day. But after I got sober, about 4 years after I got sober, I felt the need to give back to the community that helped me get sober. So I began exploring ways I could give back. Several of the folks that I hung out with in AA at the time would go into prisons and talk about their experiences, how they found sobriety and yada 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 and so forth. But I went along with them a couple times, but I just couldn't relate to those fellas, those people. But then I got to thinking, you know what? I lived in a community where there was a lot of hard drinking. I know I led it a lot of times myself. And I wasn't looking to go into the, perhaps back into the Air Force to tell people how to get sober. I thought maybe if I could share my story, somebody could find a way of relating to my story and might be able to help them. I struck upon an idea that maybe if I could go to the schoolhouse for flight surgeons and talk to them about alcoholism from the standpoint of somebody that's been through it, as opposed to somebody that was getting a briefing from during a lecture on the nature of the disease. So I called down to Brooks Air Force Base, where the School of AvMed was, aviation medicine was at the time, and I met a wonderful man, Colonel Bob Ireland, and I floated my idea with him. I said, Colonel Ireland, I introduced myself and told him I'd been retired for at that time, 10, 12 years, 11, 12 years. And I said, when we receive lectures, it's always from the academic side of the house. I said, very rarely, if ever, was I ever given a lecture or presentation by someone who had gone through the fire, had walked through the fire of alcoholism. And I said, I would like to offer myself to come down and talk to you and to talk to the doctors going through flight surgeon school about the nature of this disease from my perspective. So he invited me down, which was a good deal. My mom at the time lived in San Antonio, so I could go down and see Mom. And then drove out and met Bob, and we talked a little bit about it. I don't know if it was that meeting, it might have been, or maybe the next visit. But soon thereafter, he brought together the chief of aerospace medicine, the chief of Air Force psychology and psychiatry, and a couple other folks over to a luncheon just off base, a Mexican place. And we met there for lunch. And Bob was explaining to him a little bit about my background. And then he introduced me, and I told him what I thought I could offer the flight surgeons from a different perspective. We're sitting there having lunch, and this waitress, she, sweet lady, she comes up and she's standing there. She's standing in front of 3 or 4 full colonels, a lieutenant colonel, and these guys are all the movers and shakers of the medical community in the Air Force. And without reservation, she says, "You guys better listen to what he is saying. He is telling you the truth." She says, "I myself have been in sobriety for 3.5 years now, and I am telling you what he is telling you is the truth." Anyway, these guys just sat there for a minute, looked at her, and they were all mesmerized by her. And then she went off, and one of the lieutenant colonels at the table looked over me and said, "Okay, how much did you pay her to say that?" No, I didn't. But anyway, so I was given the opportunity to speak on the flight surgeons course about once a quarter for the next 3.5, 4 years, and it was an opportunity I just absolutely loved. I loved doing because it was my way of giving back into that community. And I used to love talking to the doctors. Maybe 50 to 70 of them in a briefing room in any given lecture. And I always had one guy raise his hand, and he'd say, "Colonel Holliker," he said, "how is it you think you hid your disease from the flight surgeons for so many years?" And I said, "Well, sir," I said, "really, it was easy." And he says, "Well, how is that?" I said, "I lied to you. I mean, what the hell? You'd say, how many do you drink? Yeah. How many, what do you drink? Beer? How many beers do you typically have? Oh, 2 or 3 before I have a few more." But I didn't say the second part of that. Anyway, so I was giving these lectures one day to at one class, and I don't know why it was or how it came to me. I had seen Terry Bradshaw's introduction into the Hall of Fame at Canton, into the NFL Hall of Fame, and there was a moment when Terry was giving his acceptance speech, and that thought came to me as I was talking to these doctors, and I was talking to them about flying, and I was talking to them about how I really never had the opportunity to fly the airplane sober. Now, I did not fly when I had been drinking, but when you're drinking as much as I was, for as long as I was, your mind's not sober. I don't care if you have 12 hours or 24 hours or 36 hours between drinks. It's that stinking thinking that's embedded in your brain. So I'm standing there talking this one morning, and this thought came to me. It just popped up, and I looked out at the crowd and I said, to paraphrase from Terry Bradshaw during his acceptance speech, what I wouldn't give to hit those start buttons one more time sober. And that's a takeoff from when Terry was speaking, and he said, what I wouldn't give to stick my hands under Mike Webster's butt one more time. And it just resonated with me. Well, little did I know it resonated with one of the flight surgeons in the crowd that day, a man named call sign Voodoo. And he came up and we shook hands after the presentation and began a conversation. And over the next 3 years, the conversation continued. And at one point he said, Bob, we're having a safety day here at Columbus, and I'd like to invite you down to come and speak to our student body and our IPs and the staff. And I think we can get a T-38 ride for you. Say no more, I'm packing. So as it turned out, as it kind of moved along, I was given that opportunity and found my way at Columbus. And the morning of my presentations, I had the opportunity to meet with Colonel Dave Lewis. He was the DO at the time, and I don't know what it was, I don't know how it was, but we just struck up a bond, and I really enjoyed talking to that man. He heard what I was saying, and then I went and took a physical and a mini physical, and then went down to the squadron, got a briefing, walked out to the jet, and it was like I'd never left it. It was just climb back up in the cockpit in the back seat. This was a C model as opposed to the A model I flew, but the basic airplane, the sounds, the smell, all the same. Oh, I'll tell you what, that was magic. So we fired it up, and the ground operations were a lot different than what it was when I flew it, because it had all this magic in there, all these TV screens in front and this, that, and the other, and okay, fine. So we taxied out and got to the end of the runway, got clearance for takeoff. And on takeoff leg, two things happened. As we made that turn out of traffic, first thing that I noticed is the air conditioner was spitting ice at me, and I'd forgotten about that. You had to, it was just the way it was, and then right after takeoff, you take the heat and turn it all up and blow out the system. It works fine. The next thing that happened was sweat had accumulated on my eyebrows and was dropping down into my eyes. Now, that happened a lot when I was flying on the line, and it stings. When that sweat gets in your eyes, it stings like hell. But I just sat there that day and just was with it. I didn't want to wipe away that stinging, because it just took me back to those memories of many, many takeoffs on many days. At any rate, we flew out to the area, did some basic maneuvers, and he said, "Do you remember how to do a loop?" And I thought, how do you not insult this guy? Anyway, I said, yeah, 500 knots, 4 to 5 Gs over the top, keep the wings level. So hard about that. Anyway, he said, well, just keep an eye on the G meter. And I'm thinking to myself, I would love to do that if I knew where the damn G meter was. You moved everything around. I can't find it. So I just pulled to the tickle, looking out left and right. Everything worked fine. Came back and landed after an hour. Did a couple low approaches, and then to a full stop. And then as we taxied in, we punched off the intercom, dropped our oxygen mask. And I remember sitting there that afternoon, just sitting there, feeling nothing but gratitude. As I taxied in, I was grateful for the opportunity to have flown that airplane for the many years I did. I was also grateful for not hurting anybody with my addiction and the garbage that came with that. And I just sat there that afternoon realizing what a gift I had been given. And so I tell this story today in case it reaches somebody. I shied away from recovery for so many years. And if I had to put one word to it, it would be stigma. I was so afraid of the stigma associated or affiliated with alcoholism. It kept me from seeking help. At any rate, like I said, I will always be grateful to Voodoo and to Lou Dog for their efforts in helping me get that last ride. Because ever since that ride, I've been so much at peace with not being able to fly that airplane again, but just feeling gratitude for having flown it. A couple P.S. notes, if you will, that just a couple hours later, after I got out of the cockpit, I hurt so damn bad I couldn't believe it. Holy crap, my body was just sore as a devil. We'd only flown an hour. And here, I used to fly that thing two, three times a day. Didn't think anything about it. And just kind of laugh at it. But that afternoon, that evening, I was one hurting puppy. still sore the next day from all the stresses affiliated with it. And like I said, it just it was an opportunity I had been given. And the last thing I noted with that ride is I've never felt empty after that ride. It fulfilled something. It fulfilled a hole in my soul that had been left because of the alcohol, if you will, if you can understand that. That was truly my Finney flight. And like I said, I just feel so much gratitude for it, even today. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll be back with another story or two here in a few days. See you, bye.